Hi guys, welcome to episode 13 of the Inner Alchemy podcast. I'm your host Sandal Roy, and today we're talking about Lilith, and I literally just realized that this was episode 13, so that's a really interesting synchronicity there, that episode 13 is about Lilith. And I had planned to kind of do this episode and in preparation for my next webinar. Okay, because we're going to be talking about Lilith again in my next webinar. Y'all know I've previously done a webinar on Lilith as well. But yeah, this one, I posted a short clip from episode 10, okay, where I'm talking about dark feminine teachings and basically responding to the Wizard Liz drama and sharing some of my own personal experience. And in that short clip, it's from the end of the podcast where I basically mentioned Lilith, or basically Lilu-like entities that basically had been attacking me in the field. And I posted it to TikTok and Instagram in preparation for this podcast. And my TikTok doesn't get a lot of, usually I did know that it was going to trigger some people. It triggered a lot of people, okay? And I've been heavily trolled on TikTok since I posted it. Usually if I know a piece of content is going to trigger people, I'll usually pray over it first and set the intention that it only reaches those that need to hear it at this time, and that anyone that's going to not need to hear it or be triggered by it, or is not the intended audience, that somehow it won't find their way. And usually that serves me quite well, but I didn't do that this time because my TikTok doesn't really get a lot of engagement. Like, I'm not on there very much. I kind of hang out more on Instagram. I'm a very old millennial. I'm 40 now, so TikTok is kind of a bit of a new app for me, and I just can't really get used to it. And yeah, so, I get maybe one or two comments, and I just kind of post on there, just to have a backup, and just in case, I'm able to build a bigger following on there, I might eventually switch over there from Instagram. But this clip went viral, okay, because I did not realize that Witchtok, it's a thing, right? I didn't even think about it. So there's a lot of women that love Lilith on there that found it because I used the hashtag Lilith, and so they found it. They were very upset by what I was saying, and then a particular creator stitched it and responded to it, and then all her followers came over and started trolling me. So let's watch the clip, and then I'm going to respond to some troll comments, because I think I was going to prepare notes and talk about what I want to say and everything, but actually I think the troll comments have given me so much content to respond to that I don't even have to do that. So I hope you got your tea. This one is served piping hot. Sit down and let's respond to some troll comments. Okay. Okay, so first off, let's play the original clip. Lilith is basically a demonic succubus. It's actually not a female entity. It's a shape-shifting, genderless entity that will form in the shape of whatever the target finds attractive. It can also show up as an incubus if it wants to target a female who's attracted to males. Yeah, generally when we refer to Lilith, it will show up in the field as a feminine entity, okay? And a lot of women have Lilith-like entities that are succubi attached to their field to pull in and harvest male energy, okay? And basically it was showing me that all the women that he was dealing with all had Lilith-like succubi attached to them. And they were operating through these women's wounds, particularly in their womb space, okay? It was a lot of I'm not good enough type of wounds. And a lot of them, particularly the ones that knew that he was with me, were basically in their wounds were that they were in competition with me, okay? So it was I'm not good enough, so if I can get his attention, that means that I'm like her. Okay. So if you love Lilith and you've worked with Lilith and you believe that she's the first wife of Adam and that she was this feminist icon who didn't want to submit to the patriarchy, I can see why that has offended people. But what I'm saying is literally pulled from Sumerian folklore, okay? That's like, I try to look at canonical texts when I talk about things, okay? And I like to do my research. Obviously, those of you who know me who've been following me for a long time, you know that I'm an initiated oracle. I was trained by Emily Joy Harris, who is a very gifted clairvoyant that works in the fields. She comes from a Lisa Renee lineage. Basically, her mentor trained with Lisa Renee. So that's where we're coming from. That's the body of work that we pull from, okay? Now, I'm not saying that everything that Lisa Renee teaches is the truth. I always things that Emily say, I take with a pinch of salt. I always test them out in the fields myself. And I have disagreed with her respectfully on some of the things that she's taught, publicly or privately. You know, I won't just go run with things that people teach. I'll test them out for myself and I'll research them myself. So when I found Emily, I was actually working with Lilith, okay, because I hadn't gone into the more ancient stories of Lilith or Lilu or Lilithu, that the more modern interpretation of her as the first wife of Adam pull from. And so I was actually having direct experience with her. And Emily was speaking a lot against Lilith and teaching what this entity actually is and how it works in the fields according to her experience. And she was getting majorly demonically attacked and psychically attacked by devotees of Lilith, basically. And, you know, being very personally affected by it. So I kind of saw that and I started listening to what she was saying and ended up initiating with her because, you know, Emily's extremely high level with the stuff that she teaches. I'm not going to go too deep into all of that journey because, yeah, I just kind of want to stick to the subject, and I feel like that's a bit of a diversion, but that's a little bit of my background, okay? So when I'm speaking on this, I'm coming from the background of having worked with Lilith myself, having actually benefited from it, and then initiating into another system that actually helped me much more, and coming away from that whole body of work, okay? And I was a practicing witch at that time as well, okay? I no longer do witchcraft, not because I have a moral issue with it. You know, I think that there's I think there's an art to it. I think you're always actually doing magic, and you're always, you know, when you really start studying universal law and witchcraft, you're actually always doing magic whenever you speak things into creation. So you can do it consciously or you could do it unconsciously, okay? So I don't have a problem with, you know, practitioners of the craft. What I do think is unsafe, I'm not going to interfere with anybody's free will. Work with whatever deities and entities you want, okay? I'm just going to share my experience and what I've experienced in the field with working with clients, and then what I've experienced in my own life. And you can take it or leave it, okay? I'm also going to cite references, and I do try and pull from canonical texts, as well as various other occult researchers and things like that. And I do try and reference sources wherever I can so that you can look things up and decide for yourself if you believe it or if you don't believe it. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from. I'm not just making shit up, okay? I know people would like to think that. Yeah, so let's respond to some comments. Okay, so Glitter Mermaid says, what are you even talking about? You clearly have no idea about her. Okay, so I've responded, I literally worked with her for 2 to 3 years, and that's how I even ended up in a karmic interface in the first place. If you want to continue, you can. I'm only here to help those that want to listen. If you don't like it, leave. So, you know, if you want to work with Lilith, that's fine, okay? I'm not telling... And for the record, I don't have a problem with people who work with Lilith, okay? If you... Like, I have friends who work with Lilith. I have friends who like her. They disagree with my perspective on her or it, because I'm going to explain how it's actually not female. yeah, there's actually a lot of creators and influencers in this space who reference Lilith and who like Lilith and who speak positively about Lilith, and I don't have a problem with those people. I actually highly respect them. Sarah Magdalene is one who speaks a lot. You know, her whole platform is speaking for Palestine. Love Sarah Magdalene. Don't agree with her take on Lilith, okay? That's cool. We can still be friends, okay? I've got various, you know, Genevieve, Gnostic Alchemy. She also talks about Lilith. Freya, who I had on the podcast here, is one of my closest friends, okay? We hang out, talk, like most days, okay? She also disagrees with my take on Lilith. We can still be friends, okay? But I'm still going to share my experience, and I'm going to cite references and sources, not to like prove that I'm right. You decide what you want, okay? Do whatever you want, okay? But it's crazy how many uninformed people are on here who are so uninformed that they don't even understand how uninformed they are. Like, they acting like they know something when they don't. And like, I know some of y'all who have been on my channel for a while, you know, who are truth seekers, who are basically uncovering lost esoteric knowledge, have experienced this kind of ridicule when you're sharing something that people aren't used to or haven't heard before. So this is basically what we were talking about in my Reclaiming the Voice webinar, the persecution that you'll experience when you actually start speaking up against you know, the dominant narrative that has basically pushed certain esoteric wisdom to the margins, okay, and made us dig for it. When we start sharing that with people to help liberate people, yes, we can face ridicule, okay, because these people don't even know how uninformed they are. And even when they're starting uncovering lost knowledge, like the first wife of Adam, that was like, you know, that was not from a canonical text, okay? That was from the Alphabet of Ben Sirah. I'm going to reference that and talk about that more deeply further on in the video. But when I first discovered that, I was like, damn, I didn't know that. I thought I was uncovering something really ancient and hidden. And then I researched a little bit more, and I was just like, whoa, okay, a lot of these women who are working with this energy, thinking that it's the first wife of Adam, don't even know the origin stories. They haven't even looked them up, okay? Some have, okay? I've got a very mixed response here. So then Andy Smith, you're clueless. She was Adam's first wife. Obviously, I know the story. So I've responded, you need to do more research. The Hebrew stories of her being Adam's first wife, and she's even a demon in that story, okay? In the Alphabet of Ben Sirah, she's even a demon in that story, okay? Even a succubus in that story. Came much later than the original Sumerian lore of the Lilu collective. Read books, they have good info. And he just continued to troll me. You're clueless, you have no idea. And I'm like, okay, why don't you make a post about it, proving me wrong, citing actual primary source data then? I'm so curious. And he goes, because I have a life, ha ha ha. I mean, they're not representing Lilith very well right now. So yeah, I'm just, okay. I asked ChatGPT to summarize the history, okay? I get that ChatGPT is not the arbiter of truth. I've actually had ChatGPT lie confidently to my face in the past. So if you're asking it, you know, if you're using it as a research tool, you do need to make sure that you're cross-referencing things, okay? To make sure that there's no inaccuracies and that what they're saying is actually true, okay? I have cross-referenced a lot of this, but it does seem to be a pretty good summarization of the history of this character. Okay, so the first mentions were the Mesopotamian origins. Literally the first written mention of this character was in the story of Gilgamesh and the Hulukpu tree. Okay, and Ishtar is mentioned in this story as well. And in that story, it talks about a tree and a serpent, okay? And Lilith or Lilu, I need to go back and look. But the original story is in cuneiform, Sumerian. So I reckon it probably would have been Lilu. So obviously with translations, there can be some inaccuracies, but I reckon it was probably Lilitu or Lilu, because that was the ancient Akkadian and Sumerian names for this entity. Okay. So, we don't, let's be honest, okay? We don't all have time to go and do a PhD in ancient Sumerian, okay? Depends how serious you are about this subject. Maybe some people will go and do that, and that should be respected if somebody has done that, but then they might not be like an expert in other branches of occult wisdom or in witchcraft, or they might not be a clairvoyant that works in the field. So let's all respect each other's area of study, because we're not going to be experts on everything, okay? And this is why this kind of trolling is not, I just don't agree with it. Like, unless somebody's actually like promoting harm, I can understand that people think that I'm promoting harm, but that's not what I'm trying to do, okay? And I understand with what they believe, and the fact that they probably haven't done this deeper research, most of them, I can understand why they feel like I'm promoting harm, because I'm keeping people away from this empowering feminist figure that would help liberate women. But if you go a little bit deeper, you'll realize that that's actually not what I'm doing, and that those archetypes that they think they're working with are actually other energies. Oh, my light is not working. Okay, so names like Lilitu, Ardit, Lili, and Lilu appear in Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian sources. These refer to male and female and male spirits or demons. Okay, often associated with wind disease and sexual temptation. Okay, this is where the succubus thing comes in. Okay, for example, Gilgamesh Enkidu in the Netherworld mentions a Lilith in a tree, possibly a spirit. Go read that book, okay, guys? And then there's also the Gilgamesh and the Hulukpu tree. So, yeah, there's various different poems that mention the Lilu, okay? And it's interesting, okay? So if that's an interesting rabbit hole that you want to go down. Then later mentioned in the book of Isaiah in the Hebrew Bible, the wild beasts of the desert shall also meet with the wild beasts of the island and the screech owl, Lilith, okay, in brackets, okay? So the word Lilith is actually apparently a very clear Hebrew word that literally means a night creature, okay? Now, I get where people start to get a little bit touchy about this, okay? Because the Abrahamic text introduced a lot of patriarchal ideas around the idea of a masculine god, and the light being masculine and the dark being feminine, which obviously comes from occult science basically anyway. Like if you look at Tantra, if you look at Taoism, for example, the light is masculine, the darkness is feminine, and then it also has, so it's not just patriarchal, it can also have racist overtones as well. That light is good and masculine, and dark is feminine and bad and evil, okay? So I get that people have tried to reimagine this archetype for that reason, okay? But ancient Sumerian folklore, and okay, I'm not pulling from this just from my own research. In ancient Sumerian folklore, the Lilu were shape-shifting demons and succubi, okay? That's what they were, and that's where the idea of Lilith, the name Lilith, even comes from. Okay, then the next mention is in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Second Temple literature. So this is again Jewish, Hebrew, canonical texts. There's a fragment in Songs of the Sage that mentions Lilith among various evil spirits. Okay, this is where she starts to become a female demon. Okay, Talmud and rabbinic literature. She's depicted as a female night demon in the Babylonian Talmud. Okay, I don't like the Babylonian Talmud. Okay, there's a lot of nonsense in there. So I'm not saying that. I'm not even saying that everything in here is true. Okay, I'm just talking about the history of their being. Okay, and then sharing my own experience with her in the field. Okay, so in the Babylonian Talmud, Lilith is depicted as a female night demon with long hair who may harm newborns or seduce men. She's associated with nocturnal emissions, i.e., you know what that is, right? So that's where the succubus association comes from. Infertility and danger to mothers. Okay, and then in the alphabet of Ben Sirah, okay, this is in the 8th to the 10th century after Christ, This is the first text that fully portrays her as Adam's first wife, okay? So it claims that they were both made from the same earth, they were man and woman, that they were equal, that she didn't want to submit to Adam, and then she left Eden, and eventually she became a demon, and then God created Eve as her replacement and more submissive, okay? So a lot of people have referenced this text, okay? And this is where a lot of the now understanding of Lilith that a lot of these witches and feminist occultists are pulling from, okay? This is not a canonical text, okay? I'm not giving more authority to like canonical texts, but I'm just saying that because it is important to know that just because it's not canonical, i.e. it's not authoritative to the Jewish religion, doesn't mean that it should be dismissed, okay? Y'all know I don't play like that. If you've known me for a while, I don't play like that, okay? That's still something that we should be looking at. In fact, there's even more reason to look at it if the religious authorities pushed it aside and deemed it heretical. There's even more reason to look at it, okay? But it was allegorical, okay? It wasn't a historical account. It was actually satire. And it was, you know, very intelligent satire. Like, okay, the author was obviously a very intelligent person, was very highly initiated into occult wisdom because it's written in Aramaic and it's encoded with gematria, okay? And it was a satirical commentary on religious power structures, okay? And it was critiquing religious power structures, which y'all know I'm all about, okay? They said that their author had some anarchist tendencies, which I'm all about, okay? And it was archetypal, okay? It was making a commentary on, probably he was commenting on all kinds of class struggles and probably also on gender. I think this story on Lilith was probably a conversation that he was having about gender roles in ancient Judaic times, okay? Because it was extremely, not just patriarchal, but downright misogynistic, okay? Christianity and Islam were extremely progressive when it came to women's rights compared to what was, you know, the Jewish religion that came before. Obviously, Judaism has now evolved into, you know, conservative Judaism and Reform Judaism, and you've got all these different interpretations of the text that have obviously modernized the religion quite a lot. But Judaism in Jesus's time and before was extremely misogynistic and patriarchal. So, you know, I get why, you know, a lot of people have tried to, a lot of writers have tried to retell this story and reference the alphabet of Ben Sira, and then build upon it, which a lot of the more modern authors, that devotees and followers of Lilith and people who like her and work with her are pulling from, okay? But that doesn't make those stories true. And, you know, like, yes, okay, you got to work with the entity, and that's what the creator who stitched my work, that's what she was saying. And I will respond to her video in full, but let's continue. Let's go back to the comments, okay? Because there were more things that I wanted to say. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the podcast, and if you are and you want to go a little bit deeper, you can join my Patreon for just £6 a month, and in there you will get access to full-length podcasts. I go pretty deep in all of these podcasts. I speak very raw, very unfiltered, and I share a lot of esoteric truths. The podcast that you're getting on YouTube, obviously I share as much as I can, but the reality is a lot of people are not ready for some of these deeper truths that I share on my Patreon. And there's also a lot of personal insights from my own relationship that I share on there, which I don't really want to be airing out to the public. But I do want those of you who are in my inner circle, who are deeply devoted to this path, to be able to learn from those and to be able to access those at a price that is accessible. So for just £6 a month, you can access the full-length podcasts. And if you want to just donate to support the work that we're doing here at Inner Alchemy, you can do that for £3 a month, or however much you can afford or want to donate. And I hope to see you over there. Hun, she is fully an entity that's older than your Bible. Stop blaming her for your silly love life. How the fuck? How dare you? So yes, I know that she's an entity that's older than the Bible. That's what I'm referencing. It's saying I'm not blaming the entity for my love life. Okay, so this is why I don't like short form content. I will clip short form content to pique people's interest and then get them over to the long form content. So if you watched the long form content where I talk about what happened with my ex in greater length, okay, I wasn't blaming her. Okay, it's, you know, everybody's responsible for their own actions. Okay, my ex cheated on me because he was a piece of shit. Okay, because he had no integrity. He was in an active addiction, which makes people act like narcissists. He had a lot of unhealed trauma that he wasn't, do I want to say he wasn't willing to look at? He didn't feel like he had the bandwidth to process his trauma, and he wanted out. Like, he wanted out. I wasn't supposed to be with him. He wasn't my soulmate, okay? So he did that for whatever reason he did. But that doesn't mean that there weren't entities involved, okay? There a lot of the time, okay, you can't negate the influence that entities have over your life, okay? Otherwise, if they have no influence over you, then why are you even working with them? Like, do you ever think about that? Like, if they don't do anything, then why would anybody even bother calling upon them and working with them? Okay, they do stuff. They do influence people, knowingly or unknowingly. So that was what I was shown in the field, okay? Maybe I shouldn't have used the term Lilith-like entities. Maybe I should have used the term Lilu, like they were like Lilu type succubi. That's what happened, okay? That's what I was shown in the field, and yeah, that's what happened. Quinn says, yo, you have problems, my gal. Don't spread false information. You have engaged Lilith and Sajo. I don't know. That makes no sense. Like, a lot of people on TikTok don't make sense. Like, there's a lot of like spelling mistakes and like grammatical errors. Maybe because it's like a younger audience, and you know, I don't get the feeling that people read a lot of books on here. Girl, Luna Flames Grimoire says, girl, what? Have you done any research on Lilith? There are astronomical amounts of info on Lilith, and you decide to just make up a bunch of bullshit. Okay, so as I've just shown you this, it's not a bunch of bullshit. I've done plenty of research. And yeah, and probably the most of my research that I've done on Lilith after working with her directly was from Lisa Renee's work. So I invite you all to check out Lisa Renee's work on Lilith. It will clear up a lot of things, especially if you're working with Lilith and you're finding that it's not serving you. Like, it's serving you in some ways, but you're also having a lot of chaos, and yeah, you're not really getting your life in order. Okay, I'm going to speak to the chaos and order principle, okay, especially when it relates to alchemy in a bit. But yeah, have a look at Lisa Renee's work, Luna for Flames Grimoire, okay, and see what she has to say. Okay, so Miss Cupcake Noir says, where did you get that? I got it from literally the origin stories. Two Black Hearts says, girl, please, just because you're weak doesn't mean she's bad. So, okay, so if she's not bad, then why hasn't she taught you some manners? If she's like I don't know, my divine mother will teach me some manners, okay? I won't just go around trolling people. Like, if somebody's posting like incorrect things that I don't agree with, like, okay, I get why people are upset that I've like said bad things about the goddess that they love, okay? I certainly feel a type of way when people insult Ishtar, who I don't refer to as a goddess, by the way. I actually don't believe in the idea of gods and goddesses, okay? There is one prime creator, and there's emanations that emerge from that, aeons, okay? I work with the Christ Sophia logos now, okay? That is the singular emanation that emerges from the Godhead, okay, and any beings that serve that logos, I work with those, okay, and I'm very clear about that. I don't work with any demons. Okay, Demonology 101, how do we define a demon? Okay, a demon is not actually a descriptor of a type of being. It's an adjective to describe the nature or quality of the being. It is any being that has chosen to not submit to Prime Creator and has broken the source connection that connects you to the Godhead and chosen to follow the laws of free will and go their own way and do as they will. Okay, like the Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt. And not really, they don't worry about the following moral law. They're just going to do what they want, right? And look, not all demons are bad. That's true, okay, what she's saying, okay? They're not all evil. Some of them are actually completely benign. Some of them are even good sometimes, but they follow the laws of free will rather than doing what God tells them to, okay, and submitting to the will of Creator. And they haven't got that close relationship with Creator, or they're not seeking that union with Creator, okay? That's a demon, okay? And yeah, like I have had several Lilith devotees here like admit that yes, okay, she is a demon. Okay, so somebody's asked, what's your take on, I'm not responding to all the comments, by the way. What's your take on Lilith in the birth chart? So I'm not into astrology. I'm not like, I don't know, I don't like astrology. It's not my forte. I'm not really interested in it. It's one of those things, like, you know, I got heavily into it when I first started awakening and looking to the planets for answers. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not, like, if you're into astrology, that's cool. It's just not my jam. So yeah, sorry, I'm just not an expert on that. And if that's your area of expertise, then yeah, speak on it. Like, that's cool. Like, I'd be interested to hear your take on that. This person was actually pretty respectful. I just said, I'm not an astrologer, that's outside my domain. And she said, her name's Amoret. Since I've been working with Lilith for about 7 years, I've been celibate and been near no man or woman. And yeah, so that was that was interesting for me to hear. Because I get how that can happen as well, because when I was working with Lilith, she was very much like, find your power, okay? You're worth more than this. And so I became way more discerning about who I was sharing my energy with. But the Christ Sophia union path, you'll have that, you'll experience that as well, to the point of total exclusion, and you won't want to give yourself to anyone who's not your soulmate. Whereas with Lilith, I felt like, in my experience, it was a bit more transactional. It was just like, I'm not going to deal with anybody who doesn't see my worth and who doesn't want to, you know, show me that I'm worth it, because of my wounds at the time, okay? So this is where the Lilith camp are going to try and like jump on me to try and defend their goddess and say, see, it was your wounds. And that's like wound shaming. You know, I'm not into wound shaming. Like, I'll just talk about it factually. Like, that's what was happening with these women. But I'm not, you know, I'm not wound shaming. I think that they acted out of integrity. I wouldn't go deal with a man that was in a relationship like that. Like, that's crazy to me. So yeah, I just responded, that's so interesting. Definitely the first I've heard of that. What benefits have you experienced from working with her? She said, sacred rage, self-respect, knowing I'm equal to a man and not even considering to settle for less. Lilith is in Aquarius in my chart, so I was born to rebel, apparently. And I said, that's interesting. I'm glad you've had a positive experience, and I hope it stays that way. Those lessons can all be learnt without Lilith, as they're universal truths that Lilith is not the exclusive arbiter of. I don't personally need a demon to teach me I'm equal to a man, because I know it as an inherent universal truth. Same goes for other things you mentioned. So look, I'm not denying that Lilith is powerful, okay, or the Lilu, or whatever this entity is, okay, alien dark mother. That's basically how Lisa Renee refers to this archetypal being, that some in one manifestation is, I think she calls them Black Moon Lilith. I need to double check. But like I said, okay, Lisa Renee's not my guru, okay? But I have observed that a lot of what she teaches, there's some inaccuracies and some things that I'm about with Lisa Renee. I'm a little skeptical of the fact that it definitely does sound like she's been using an AI voice, an AI generated voice for her podcast, or a computer generated voice for her podcast. And it was like, for years now, like a lot of us have noticed, and before AI was like publicly available to people, like I don't really have a problem with that necessarily. Like I understand she's a really busy woman, she needs to get content put out, you know, I don't have a problem with her using those tools, but it's just, firstly, it's a little off-putting. It feels a little artificial. I don't like the way it sounds. But secondly, with the things that she says about AI and transhumanism, it's just a little strange to me. So it makes me a little skeptical of her. But I do think that a lot of the information that she's sharing is super high level. And I have observed in the fields that, you know, there's a lot of truth to it. So yeah. And then Jamie Murray asks, what the fuck would Lilith have to do with your ex cheating on you? That's his problem, surely. So I mean, she wasn't actually trolling. We had a little bit of a back and forth, and I was just like, hey, can you not use what the fuck when you're talking to me? She apologized, and anyway, because obviously it's not nice receiving all these comments, right? I didn't really enjoy it. But yes, okay, it's obviously I don't care what entity you have on you. If that entity is making you behave completely and do something morally wrong, that's on you, okay? You can't be blaming that on the entity. Now, my work, I do entity removals for my clients, but you're still accountable for the influence that entity has over you. But removing the entity can help you come more into your sovereignty, okay? Because they do run interference patterns on our field, and they can make us act in ways that aren't in our highest good. So that's why I talk about this. That's why I share the experience. And that is what happened, okay? Now, there was one, I want to respond to Coco because she stitched my video. And she was very upset about what I had to say and responded quite strongly. Now, before I play her video, I just want to preface this by please asking you guys, don't go over to her platform and leave negative comments. Please also, if you're commenting on what she's saying here, please keep your comments respectful, okay? Her comment section is full of a lot of nasty comments about me, calling me a narcissist, calling me a succubus, and that is not the kind of space that I want to be cultivating here. They're not representing Lilith very well. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to be doing the same, okay? So let's keep it classy over here. Obviously, you know I don't play those nice girl games, okay? Like if somebody's a Zionist, or if it's like Aubrey Marcus who's like pushing polyamory and calling it radical monogamy, you can say whatever you like about the person. But after Coco made this video, I did watch some of her other content, and I actually think she's cool. I don't like how she spoke to me in this video. I think she kind of spoke kind of crazy, but I do get it, okay? Because I have insulted her. She's obviously very close to Lilith and loves Lilith and feels like Lilith is her mother. I get that she feels insulted by what I've said, okay? I feel a type of way when people say things about Ishtar, okay? My connection with Ishtar is very deep, very personal. I will share the story at some point. It's full of a lot of crazy synchronicities, and it's a very long story, and it keeps evolving as well. It's not something that I even understood at first. Okay, I just chose the name Ishtar because when I went to Bali, I needed a pseudonym because my name Sandal means whore, and I didn't even realize that Ishtar is referred to as the whore of Babylon. And I was healing from a lot of sexual trauma and sexual distortions as well when I went to Bali. So it was really, really synchronistic. And I didn't even really know who this goddess was. I just needed another name to use for modeling purposes and when introducing myself to people. Because when I first went, the locals were really making fun of me with my name, which was unpleasant. And my agency, Bali Stars, Michaela at Bali Stars, asked me to choose another name. Now, obviously in Ubud, a lot of people will take a spiritual name, Lion, Sifu, Shakti, Devi. And so I was just like, all right, let me just pick a goddess name. And I just went through, and I was, doing a lot of moon rituals at the time, and I just picked a particular lunar goddess, okay, Ishtar. And then learned more and more about her over the years, and it's a crazy story. So I have a personal connection to her, and people have said a lot of bad things about Ishtar, and it does trigger me, and it does get my back up a little bit, and it does make me feel a type of way, because I don't think that she's all bad. Okay, I think that there's been some distortions, and what I've also been able to channel in the fields over the years working with clients is that, yes, there were some crazy things that happened in the temples with the priests and priestesses who devoted themselves to her and her lineage, and that were really not cool. That doesn't mean, I don't feel like she's responsible for that. Okay, so I get where some of these people are coming from, saying don't blame your shit on this entity, you got to take responsibility. And that's a very Lilithian thing, because when I was working with her, it's very like take responsibility. But that's also Kabbalah, okay? And if anybody studied Kabbalah, you'll know that Lilith is a really Kabbalistic demonology. Lilith is central to that, okay? And it's all about taking ultimate responsibility. If you've watched my previous podcast, you know how I feel about Kabbalah, okay? Look at what's happening in Israel right now, okay? And the things that they're saying about the Palestinians, okay? They're literally like, they do Darvo, basically. They reverse victim and perpetrator, okay, and say take responsibility for what's happening to you. That's all Kabbalah, okay? It literally will set you up for abuse. I don't agree with that as a modality. So them saying take responsibility, I actually don't agree with that, okay? I used to when I was of the Lilithian school of thought, and I disagree. That's not empowering, okay? I think it's actually very satanic ideology. And if you study Kabbalah, you'll know that, okay? Because they literally believe that God is Satan, or that Yahweh is Satan. And I would say that's actually correct, because after reading the Old Testament, that Yahweh is not God, he's a demon. But yeah, they also will say that the divine feminine, Shekinah, is also the other side of her, is Lilith. And that's not exactly true, okay? Yes, there's a wound, the soul splinter of your divine feminine, your divine mother, or Shekinah, or Shakti, or Sophia, whatever you want to call her, will have sometimes that shadow will be held hostage by a demonic entity that is feeding on that soul splinter, okay? I covered this extensively in my webinar, The Feminine Shadow, okay? We talk about a lot about Lilith, okay? That's a free webinar that's on my website. Y'all can go have a look at that, okay? This is not my first rodeo talking about Lilith. And, all these comments saying that I don't know how to, haven't done my shadow work. I have a different perspective on shadow work, okay? And in that webinar, I talk about how to do shadow work safely without integrating demons into your field. You don't need to integrate demons into your field. You can literally pull those aspects of your soul splinter back to you and take the demons off and send them back to source, okay? You don't need to be working with demons to do shadow work. Sometimes I do with clients, okay? Usually when I seal the space, I say we don't consent to commune with any spirits that don't serve the living Christ. But if they have an entity on them, sometimes it can be useful to ask that entity what its motivation is and why it's attached to my client's field. And we'll usually do that in the presence of Yeshua, Jesus, because he's very loving and he will actually talk to the entity. I don't like to communicate too much with them because they can be tricksters and they can be deceptive and very manipulative. And they are powerful, okay? And they will contract with you, and they will try and make deals with you. And that's why people will have them on their field, okay? Consciously or subconsciously. Obviously, a lot of these witches are consciously working with them. But many people are subconsciously working with them and not realizing what's attached to their field. So with Yeshua, Yeshua will talk to the entity and be like, what's your motivation? Why are you attached to this person? And they'll actually sometimes say, because this person is actually doing really important work, liberating people, and we're losing our fuel source. We need to feed Like we need to feed on the sustenance that's coming from these people's wounds, and how are we going to survive otherwise? And Jesus will be like, yeah, there's other ways. Like, you can also go back to God. And some of them don't want to do that, but some of them do. Okay, I've seen many entities go back to God, and it's such a beautiful, powerful thing. Like, it brings tears to my eyes sometimes. I've actually had clients cry in sessions when they've seen like an entity that was attached to them go back to God. Yeah, it's super beautiful whenever that happens. So yeah, I just prefer working with God now. I don't really... Okay, so anyway, I want to respond to Coco's TikTok, okay, because she brought up some points, and I want to respond to those points respectfully, okay? I'm not trying to throw shade at her. I don't really like how she spoke to me, but we did have in the video, but I did have a back and forth with her in the comment section. I did my best to keep things respectful because, yeah, like I was saying, I do get it, okay, why she's getting so upset, okay? I understand, okay? Like I've just said about Ishtar. I've seen Emily literally come on video crying because somebody has said that Sophia is an AI, or Sophia is the mother of the archons. And that's actually written in the Gnostic text, okay? They're referencing the Gnostic text when they say that, okay? But that's not our experience with Sophia when we work with Sophia, okay? That's not our experience in the fields. So I get that people can have a different experience working with this entity, even if I'm referencing the original origin stories, that they've had a different experience and they don't like what I'm saying, because we do the same with Sophia. But I've experienced different sides of Lilith, okay? I've experienced, like, the empowering side of her, and then I've also experienced, like, the demonic, and I just don't think it's safe to be working with demons. So, and I'll explain why. Okay, it's getting a little dark, so we're changing the lighting. Yeah, so not only do I understand why she's upset, even though I don't like it, I get it. And then also if I'm responding to somebody's content, I usually look at like quite a little bit about them just to find out what that person's about, what wisdom traditions they're pulling from, so that I can comment on it properly and more expansively, and try and see where they're coming from. I did this with Aubrey Marcus. However, somebody got very upset that I always kept on calling him Aubrey. And yeah, just try and, just see, not make, because I don't want to make assumptions, okay? And if you're just responding to like a very short clip that somebody's posted, it can be really easy to make assumptions, and you don't really understand like what their area of expertise is. So I did watch quite a few of her videos, and I can kind of see where she's coming from and why she has such a strong connection to this being. So that kind of made me like just see where she's coming from a little bit more, and try and understand her a little bit more. So I wasn't so angry after I watched some of her videos. And I responded respectfully, and she replied respectfully, and we were able to have a respectful back and forth. And then she did message me saying that she'd like to have a conversation. So I'd like to keep it at that energy level and not be amplifying any of the negativity. But yeah, just to preface that she is a little bit upset in this video. So just a warning. So let's watch it. Lilith is basically a demonic succubus. It's actually not a female.
You came on here with your whole chest and gave this explanation to the people of the Clock app, okay? I read your caption, and in your caption it stated that you found out your partner had cheated on you multiple times, and in your video you go on to explain how the women that he had cheated on you with were also devotees of Lilith, I guess.
I just want to jump in. I didn't say that they were devotees of Lilith. I said Lilith like succubi. I probably should have used the term Lilu, okay? Because that's more accurate, and I think that would have triggered less people. But yeah, let's continue. And yeah, I also want to add a caveat. When I discovered that he cheated multiple times, I discovered that he cheated with multiple people, okay? It wasn't like he cheated, I forgave him, we got back together. You know, there's a longer story that needs to happen, but it wasn't like I kept on dealing with the same person knowing that he was cheating on me, okay? I'm not crazy. I don't have that low self-esteem. Like, there's no reason why I would keep myself in a situation like that, okay? Not judging anybody who has, because I know that there's all kinds of situations, like, you know, financial abuse, having children and things like that, that would keep a woman in a situation like that. That wasn't my situation, okay? I will tell the story completely and more fully in another video. This is not what I want to be discussing extensively in this video. I want to keep the conversation on Lilith.
You described that your relationship was karmic and you were in this karmic relationship for 6 years. I don't fucking know. And you also went on to say that this succubi energy that you claim to be Lilith, at least you think is Lilith, is coiled in the wombs of women and activates the whole, like, I'm not good enough thing, and feeds off of these insecurities and the wounds of women.
So it's not that it activates that. So when a demon is or an entity is attached to somebody's field, it will be attached to a wound, okay? So the wound was already there in those women, and that's usually what allows the entity to come in, either consciously or subconsciously, okay? I didn't say coiled. It's something that she's added, and I will speak to that, okay? Because I think anyway, I don't want to digress, but there's a reason why she's used that term, I believe.
I'm going to tell you how you're drastically wrong and also kind of right. I am a devotee of Lilith, okay? I am a full-blown Lilithian as fuck witch. I am a daughter of Lilith and have been working with Lilith for a very long time. And let me tell you, the experiences that I have had with Lilith, and as somebody who works with Lilithian energy and frequently gives people Lilithian readings by dissecting their shadows, you could not be more wrong. First of all, who told you you were even worthy of being a devotee of her? Who told you that? No, I mean this with all due respect, because there is such,
Okay, so I'm not a devotee of Lilith. I'm not interested in being a devotee of Lilith. That's not the type of energy that I work with. I did work with her a few years ago.
Now, where you would be right is that Lilith is coiled in the wombs of all of the fucking witches, all of the women. Okay, you were talking about the first woman. You said that this is a genderless entity. No. The trials and tribulations Lilithians need to go through in order to be blessed with the excellence of Lilith is insane. I have touched up on this many times in my videos, that if you are a devotee of Lilith, you might frequently come across karmic relationships, but this doesn't mean that this is a bad thing. In order for you to be liberated, you can only be liberated through chaos, and that is one of Lilith's teachings. And what is more chaotic than anything is karmic relationships, but also the karmic relationship you speak of, because it's very one-sided what you're explaining, because there are also Lilithians who aren't interested in men and are interested.
Okay, I'm just going to stop her there, okay? I completely disagree with this take on karmic relationships, okay? Yes, sometimes they can't be avoided, and I did say this to her in the comment section, okay? If you've been following me for a while, you know that I've been on the divine union path for many years, and I shouldn't have even been in that relationship, and I take full responsibility for that. And she does speak to this later on, that I should be taking responsibility, which I do, okay? I should not have been with anybody who wasn't my soulmate, okay? But unfortunately, I did have some wounds. I didn't believe in the soulmate twin flame thing because I had been through a false twin flame experience before that, which, yeah, was really challenging. And so I just stopped believing in twin flames, because there's a lot of misconceptions about the twin flame union, and there's a lot of faulty teachings. And so I was so hurt by the whole thing that I was just like, this is bullshit, this is new ageism. I have got a longer video on my channel where I'm talking about twin flames, the truth about twin flames. Do check that video, okay? It does have some interesting codes. I want to revisit that video with the new upgraded codes now that I am actually in divine union with my soulmate. This person that I was with for the 6 years was not my soulmate, okay? I never felt like he was my did I say I never felt like he was my divine union? I felt like I could have a divine union with anyone that I chose at that time. I felt like you could take any relationship any partner that you chose, where you had various levels of, certain levels of compatibility, and as you healed, you could elevate it into a Christed union. I don't believe that anymore, okay? I believe that you have a person that God has templated for you, and anybody else that you're dealing with who is not that person, you're actually cheating on that person with those other people. Dom has helped me realize and understand so much about this, okay? That we were being disloyal to each other and to the union by being with these other people. And I didn't even blame Greg, when I found out, like, okay, I'll speak about this later, okay? I don't, karmic relationships, I don't think we should be looking at it like, I feel like this is some spiritual bypassing, okay? I don't think liberated through chaos, okay, sometimes we're so unwilling to heal our wounds and feel the traumas that we've been through, that sometimes it's only through the mirror of the masculine mirror, or whoever you get into a relationship with, or whoever you're attracted to, that activate those wounds, that we actually then get prompted into actually doing the work and going into the shadows and excavating and healing our traumas. Okay, I get that, but if you're on the divine union path, you should ideally be healing that stuff by yourself and just working with the Christ Sophia union energies and working on healing your own internal feminine and your own internal masculine as much as you're able to by yourself. That doesn't mean that you won't encounter false unions, okay? You might encounter some false unions, okay? I've sadly had some clients who thought that they were getting into divine union, and it turned out to be a false union as well. Once they were able to heal enough traumas that they realized that was a false union, that can happen. But if you, look, not everybody has to believe in the twin flame thing, okay, or the soulmate union, or the genetic equal, okay? I'm not telling people what to believe, because I stopped believing in it as well. But I'm still going to speak on it, and I'm still going to share my experience in the hope that it helps someone, okay? Because even though I had Emily as my mentor, who was in union with someone that definitely seemed like he was her genetic equal, it took me as far as to believe that, yes, some people have a genetic equal, but I stopped believing that mine was out there. So, that's my view on karmic relationships, okay? Sometimes it can't be helped, okay? So it's not about, saying that we should never get into these relationships. Sometimes it can't be helped. But I did say to her, because she had posted another reel talking about an abusive relationship that she had escaped. And I'm so sorry that you went through that, Coco. I've also been through that as well. And it's horrific. And especially with children as well. That's I can't even imagine. She's a warrior, in my opinion. This is why I'm please don't send her hate, okay? Because a lot of people working with these energies have been through a lot. So let's just be kind to each other as much as we're able to, okay? Whilst also being truthful to our medicine and our experience. What was I going to say? Yeah, so, being with the wrong person can literally kill you. It can literally end your life. It can really harm your children. So this is not to blame anyone who's in that situation or chooses wrongly, because I get that abusive men don't necessarily announce themselves. Yes, there can be some red flags, but a lot of the times when women look past those red flags, it's usually because they're from such a challenging background themselves that they think that that's normal. And that's really unfortunate. We're on a fallen planet, okay? We've literally been so abused and lied to about our divine nature, especially as women, that it can be easy to look past these things. And men will also fake their whole personality and pretend to be someone else so that they can get access to you. So let's not deny that also happens, okay? I don't believe in this Lilithian idea that you should take ultimate responsibility for everything that happens to you. I don't know if that's exactly what she means, but I'm assuming that that's what she means, because Lilith is a primary character in Kabbalah. So I feel like maybe that's what she's referring to. I mean, correct me if you do watch this, Coco. Correct me if I'm incorrect here. Hey guys, editing Sandal. This is my editing room. There was one thing that I forgot to mention here that I really want to, sorry, I don't want to block the mic, that I feel is important to mention, because she talks about coiled in the womb. And I didn't know why she was saying that, because I didn't use those words. But and from my work with Lilith, I feel like what she's referring to here, and then liberated through chaos, is Kundalini Shakti. Okay, Kundalini Shakti is basically coiled in your sacral or in your womb space. It's your feminine energy, it's your life force, it's your Kundalini, it's your sexual energy, not just as a woman, because men have it too. And it gets active. Once it gets activated, you can have a Kundalini awakening, and it's also what gets released during orgasm. And it does feel very shadowy and very primordial when it's first being stirred. And so, yes, if you have like shadows around your sexuality or your femininity or your feminine power, I can understand how people feel like that's like a feminine shadow or like a demonic energy. And then once it gets, once you have a Kundalini awakening and it connects you to the Godhead, then that's like ultimate liberation, okay, if you come from like a tantric or a Vedic perspective. So I think the reason why, and she says this later, that you will never understand Lilith because she's this, she's that, she's that. I think a lot of the time they're calling on, they're basically using that term to refer to multiple different aspects of the collective feminine, or even sometimes different shape-shifting entities that are part of the Lilu collective or other even classes of demons. So I don't think it's necessarily one thing that they're working with, and that's why they're seeing so many different sides. So I get that the feminine is very multifaceted, okay? The divine feminine, the deep primordial feminine is very multifaceted. But there are feminine energy demons, okay? And this is not patriarchal or misogynistic for me to say so. I said this in the Feminine Shadow webinar as well. There are male demons as well, okay? It's not misandrous for me to point out that a lot of demons have a gender to them, and some of them are genderless and shapeshift. And, according to Lisa Renee's perspective and what I've seen in the field, Lilith can shapeshift. And I don't think it's necessarily a singular entity. I think it might even be like a hive mind or a gestalt. So yeah, that coiled thing, Kundalini Shakti, that's what that is. And yes, it basically channels the Divine Mother, because we're all connected to her. We're all part of her. We're all her children. So this whole Lilith, we are the children of Lilith, and we have to prove ourselves. That really sounds like Alien Dark Mother, guys. Okay, that's Alien Dark Mother. Okay, your Divine Mother loves unconditionally. You don't have to prove yourself to her. Yeah, it's just I'm sorry. I don't mean to offend anybody. And if you're being helped by this thing, then cool. But I just want people to awaken to the truth and start connecting with the true divine energies
in women and vice versa, because you said that this energy draws in men, this succubi energy draws in men. No, it fucking doesn't. So what do you have to say for the women loving women who are also Lilithians? Because that makes no sense.
Let's just go back to the original clip, okay, because I did cover this shifting genderless entity that will form in the shape of whatever the target finds attractive. It can also show up as an incubus if it wants to target a female who's attracted to males. Okay, so I hope that answers that question. It can literally form into whatever the target finds attractive. Okay, I've had personal experience with these types of energies, incubi, succubi. Dom has also experienced them. I'm not saying that they all are part of the Lilu, okay? And I know that some people are going to have a problem with me saying that that's Lilith, okay? A lot of them are part of the Lilu, okay? So that's my experience. That's what I've observed in the fields. That's what I've experienced also working with clients. And I have some clients who work with Lilith, okay? I know that Emily, for example, I don't think that she would work with clients. I could be wrong about that, but I've had some clients that have been honest with me about that, like that they're not sure, they don't necessarily agree with my opinion on Lilith, and I'll just be like, look, this is my opinion, this is what it's based on, this is what I've experienced, this is what my training has told me. I've also worked with Lilith. Yes, she's very powerful. It's a very powerful energy that does these things, but demons aren't the exclusive arbiter of those things. Okay, there are various universal truths that demons will offer you benefits from working with them. Okay, and if those benefits help you cool, and you're empowered by working with the demon, that's fine. Okay, in the video where I talk about integrating the shadow, that was one of my first videos where I talk about Lilith, and I talk about how Lilith and Eve are two sides of the same coin, and I was doing a lot of shadow work around that time. I don't agree with all of those codes there, but for anybody who's wondering why would anybody knowingly work with a demon, a lot of occultists don't have a problem with demons. Okay, the etymology of the word demon means genius. Okay, and like I said, they're not all evil. It just means a being that follows the laws of free will, okay, and is not in submission to God, because of a lot of occultists don't even believe in God, or they think that God is like Yahweh, or God is like this tyrannical father. Okay, Yahweh is like, we call him the dark tyrannical father. There's other tyrannical father archetypes in the field that pretend to be the Most High. In my experience, the Most High has a masculine and feminine frequency. Okay, it has both. It's like a mother-father. Okay, there's a Holy Father frequency that's very benevolent, very supportive, very devotional, very loving. And there's also a Holy Mother frequency. Okay, and that is the energy that I think a lot of Lilithians are calling upon when they call her Divine Mother. I'm trying not to get too sidetracked, and because I do want to keep my thoughts linear while I'm responding to her video. And to say it doesn't draw in men, for me, in my experience, it did. Okay, and a lot, when I was reading the comments, they're talking about how Lilith will basically amplify the shadows. The thing is, a lot of this is, it's pure femininity. Okay, she's not the exclusive arbiter of these universal truths, that the feminine is the receiver. Okay, she is the 0 point. Okay, these are just basic occult truths. And yes, Lilith has obviously brought those to a lot of women, whatever this archetype is, but you can also access those truths by working with Sophia. Now, if you don't want to work with Sophia, you prefer Lilith, that's cool. Okay, I'm all about Sophia. I'm all about the feminine Christ. I'm all about divine union, and I'll explain why, okay, more as she expands on this.
I myself am in a relationship, and mine is karmic, and I can put my hands up. I've spoken about this. There was a whole crash out on here not long ago about this shit. Karmic relationships, right? When both sides are receptive and understanding that it's a karmic relationship, is because there are wounds within the both of you that need to be healed, that can only be healed through both of you. Now, what tends to happen with karmic relationships in a heterosexual relationship with a man and a woman, the men are not receptive to change. The men are not receptive to clearing out the karmic wounds. I have basically a witch for a man, okay? So the wounds that we know we have to clear, we're working on clearing them. And it has been, since we come to that realization, it has been nothing short of magical. You went through a very unfortunate thing.
I'm sad to that she's been dealing with that. That obviously sounds really challenging. I'm not really going to speak on that or pass judgment on her relationship. That I don't know enough about her or her relationship to really speak on that, and I wasn't going to go through and look at the background and speak on that. This is her personal business. I don't know. I played this video to Dom, and he he didn't agree with when she was like, the men are not receptive to change. He took exception to that. Obviously, he's not into the whole karmic relationship either. We're both about divine union. We are so happy to have found each other finally after all the bullshit that we've both been through. He was also cheated on in his last relationship. That relationship that I had with my ex was a bad thing. It was a very bad thing. I should not have been in that relationship for 6 years. Okay, but unfortunately I was testing out some shit, some law of assumption stuff. Yeah, I was just, I wasn't as aware of all the things that I'm aware of now, okay? And this is why I will speak candidly on this and speak openly about my experience, as openly as I'm able to, whilst also protecting our privacy, because we really want to help people. We really don't want people getting into these interfacing systems, these karmic interfacing systems. Your soulmate is out there. They're probably looking for you, and hurting as well, because they might be like in a relationship that's where they're being abused or not being honored, as we both were. So that's my mission here, okay? I'm not trying to harm people that follow Lilith. If you like Lilith and you're benefiting from working with her, that's cool, do you, but I am going to speak on my experience.
And I empathize. I really do, because we've all been there as a woman, where we've given all of our love and devotion to a man, and he's completely shit on us and cheated on us and hurt us in so many different ways. There's nothing more disgusting. It's such a violation. As a woman, you feel violated. But that doesn't mean, because you are no different to the countless men who have written about my mother Lilith in such a derogative way, in such a disgusting, misogynistic, patriarchal way, right? You're no different to them, because your boyfriend cheated on you and you've offloaded that responsibility onto Lilith by claiming that she's a genderless entity who is basically just a succubi.
Okay, I can see where she's coming from here, okay? Because let's continue.
Do you know how many epithets Lilith has? And this is the problem. I don't know your story.
Okay, I do understand where she's coming from here, okay? Because I definitely feel a type of way when people talk shit about Sophia and say that she's an AI, she's a mother of the archons, or they'll say that Ishtar that priests would sacrifice children to Ishtar and things like that, okay? Because the story of these beings is obviously way bigger than just that, and not everything that's been written about them is true, or you can't just reduce it to that, okay? So I understand where she's coming from, okay? In one clip, I'm not going to talk about everything to do with Lilith, okay? But I tend to believe a lot of what Lisa Renee has said, okay? About the dark alien mother who will literally, she's like basically like a wounded, she embodies like the wounded feminine energy, okay? And devotees of Lilith, I don't feel like, can you debate me on this? Like, you will go to her when you're in your wounded feminine, right? And she will help you with that, because she understands that, she's been through that, okay? And she'll convince you that she's your mother, okay? In the Colontics community, in the Ascension Mechanics, according to Lisa Renee, and also what I've observed in the field, is that there is an archetypal energy called Dark Mother. I understand the problematic associations with the term Dark Mother or Black Magic, which Coco has spoken on, and I agree that those terms are, like I said, patriarchal, racist connotations. But I haven't, and I also mentioned that in the Feminine Shadow webinar, but I haven't been able to come up with a better name for her. If somebody can help, she's basically like an archetypal demonic feminine energy, okay, and she shifts into different energy, okay, archetypes, okay. I've seen her in many different forms. I've seen her as Ursula. I've seen her as the Queen of Hearts in the Alice in Wonderland story. I've seen her as Maleficent, or a Maleficent-like being, okay? And I've also seen her as the archetypal Lilith in the Jewish folklore, okay? With the red hair and like a black lace dress. And she's a witch, okay? She has a demonic nature, okay? She's beautiful, she's magnetic, she's very powerful, okay? But my clients will come to me at a time when they're wanting to remove her influence, and they're wanting to connect to the true primordial divine mother frequencies, and they're wanting to work with the Sophia, okay? So that's what I've seen in the field. I'm sorry if you guys are offended by that, but that's just my experience. I worked with Lilith for a couple of years, and then I found more benefit in working with Christ Sophia and submitting my life to God, okay? And it's not been easy. I've had to make sacrifices. I don't regret any of them, okay? Yeah, let's continue.
your story, but this is because you have posted something like this and people are going to listen to that and go, oh shit, the fear mongering begins again. My job as a daughter of Lilith is to clear that shit because it's not true. I don't know your story, so I don't.
Okay, so on the fear mongering, okay, I'm not trying to fear monger, and somebody else commented that it was fear based. I'm not afraid of demons. I don't find demons to be fearful. I wouldn't be able to see them in the field, and I wouldn't be able to talk to them and take them off my clients and send them back to source if I was afraid of them. I just know that they don't serve my clients' highest good, and I found that it was no longer beneficial to be working with that energy. That's it, okay? It's not nothing to be fearful of, okay? If people want to work with Lilith, do it. I told my clients, you're a big girl. If you want to work with Lilith, go work with Lilith. I don't have a problem with that. But for my clients that have worked with Lilith, I do have to remove implants out of their wombs and things like that. And, you know, they can have, it can take them sometimes a little bit longer to align to the divine union path. And yes, they will get into more karmic interfaces, and I just don't find it a useful energy to be working with. I'm all about the narrow path that goes back to source, okay? The Christ stream. It's just a faster path, okay? It's more stable.
So I don't know how you worked with her. I don't know what you did. I don't know if you're even a witch. I don't know you, okay? I don't know you from Adam. But what you posted is so... It's a cop-out. Shit.
It is simplifying. It is, okay, I will admit it is simplifying, and it's just one experience that I had with these Lilu type entities. I've had so many different experiences with these types of entities. But a lot, like a devotee of Lilith, I don't think would come and work with me. I don't think Coco would come and work with me. Like, I don't think anyone in her audience would come and work with me, okay? Because I'm very clear about working with God. And Christ Sophia, like, it's a different energy. And some people have said that it's like patriarchal. Yeah, I'm about divine union, okay? I'm about the inner marriage. I'm about balancing the masculine and feminine. I think we need patriarchal systems. I think we need matriarchal systems. I'm all about that, you know, that alchemical wedding, you know? I want us all to be in love and in harmony. Like, a lot of us are attracted to men. We want to have beautiful marriages and beautiful families with men.
Have you thought that maybe it's through the chaos of this relationship that you were supposed to be liberated? When we embark on this...
Yes, okay. Actually, and when it happened, I went through his phone. I was prompted to go through his phone because I was literally done. Okay, there were so many other issues in the relationship that were happening that I was just like, I really want out. Okay, and so I went through his phone. It was the first time I'd ever gone through his phone. I was with him for 6 years and I never went through his phone. I trusted him. It's crazy. I know it's crazy to say now. I trusted him, and I was shocked by what I found there. Okay, I was really shocked by what I found there. There had been one indiscretion that had happened a few months before that I'd forgiven him for, not because I still loved him and wanted to be with him. I mean, I still had fondness and affection, and yeah, okay, I did love him, but not like I loved Dom. It's not like, it was not even close to being like that. It was like, y'all know my story. If you've been with me for a while, you know I moved to Mexico. We had been in Bali, and then because of all the travel restrictions, couldn't get to Bali. Then we were separated for a long time. We broke up in that time as well. And then we decided to move to Mexico, and I was back and forth moving all my stuff to Mexico. So I literally just got to Mexico, was about to launch my website, hard launch myself full time as an oracle. At that time, I was still modeling, and, you know, I am still modeling. But we'd moved over to the beach, and I was going to be focusing more on my oracle fieldwork. And then the genocide happens. And so that kind of threw a spanner in the works. But because my gifts come from God, I have devoted my life to submitting to God. God was like, you're going to speak on this Israel thing. You're going to talk about that, okay? And obviously, because I'm channeling the mystery school temples, all of that is connected, okay? It's all part of my templating. I don't want to digress too much. That's what happened, okay? So I was dealing with a lot in my work and also personally being affected by this genocide when I found this indiscretion on his phone by accident. He apologized, begged me for forgiveness, asked me to stay. I was completely burnt out. I was fundraising for families. I'd literally just got back to Mexico from London, brought like 4 suitcases worth of stuff, spent a lot of money, and I was in the process of doing my residency, okay? So I was not physically, logistically, emotionally, spiritually in the place to be leaving immediately at that time. So I was just like, okay, let me get my ducks in a row and let's see if he can actually make up for the indiscretion. And obviously there's a long story, okay? There's a really long story. But when I discovered what I discovered on his phone, I was still shocked, okay? Because it was disgusting. It was like, he was hitting up every single woman in his contact list and being a creep. He was actually not even, some of them were engaging, some of them were not even interested, which was so, I was embarrassed for him and even myself. I was just like, oh my God, I'm dating a creep and a loser. Like, he's not even successfully cheating half the time. But some of them were so perverted and I had no idea that he was like this, okay? Like, as much as y'all are like, take responsibility. She says later on, take responsibility for your poor choice in men. Yes, probably there is some responsibility that needs to be taken, but I had no clue that he was going to do anything like this, okay? He literally did present himself as somebody who could be honest and loyal, okay? He had some issues with alcoholism towards the end, and yes, I should have had better boundaries around that. And I should have been like, you need to be dealing with your trauma and stop turning to alcohol. I'm so grateful that Dom does not touch alcohol. I've also completely stopped drinking alcohol. But yeah, that's, I mean, it's you know, I like telling this story. And I'm hoping that it's helping you guys as well. I'm back again because I keep on forgetting to finish my point. I'll start making a point, go off on a tangent, and then not finish making the point, and then when I do the edit I'm like, I didn't even finish what I was trying to say. Yes, it liberated me, 100% liberated me from the karmic interface. If you guys have watched my previous videos on clearing the karmic interface, because it blocks your divine union, I was liberated by it, but not by Lilith. Or even these Lilu-like entities. Okay, yes, you could say in a roundabout way them attacking me for whatever. If you watch the previous videos, I said they were trying to take me down because if they didn't like the work that I was doing. That's not to say that the women were doing that. That's not, they don't know, okay? When I see into the field, I can see frequency nets, interfacing systems. I can see entities that might be feeding on those interfacing systems. And if they're hooked into my client's light body or my light body or other people's light body, what I've shown here, they were hooked into the light bodies of all the women he was dealing with. So they had their motivations and the entities had their different motivations. And yes, I was liberated by the experience because God, not by Lilith, by God, okay? Because I was submitted to the Most High, okay? I'd already begun my work with Christ Sophia years before that, even though I was still in the karmic interface. I was working on my inner union. This is so crucial, guys, okay? If you're in a relationship or you think that somebody could be your soulmate, but you're not sure, you keep focusing on your inner union, okay? In your relationship with God and aligning to your natural templating and your soul's gifts and your soul's blueprint, okay? Because that will dissolve the karmic interface. And that's what happened, okay? And it blew up in the most crazy way. And yes, I do still have some trauma from it that I need to process and heal. But yeah, it liberated me from the karmic interface and literally my soulmate came in immediately. So yes, it did liberate me, but because of God, and because of my submission to Creator, not because of Lilith. I didn't even say that this was necessarily the head honcho, okay? It was the Lilu Collective. I want to be clear about that, okay? I don't know whether the Lilu Collective serve Lilith. They might be devotees of Lilith. I'm going to dive more into this, and maybe we can, when we do the webinar, we'll go into the field and try and get more clarity on this.
When we embark on this journey with Lilith, we have to go through wild trials and tribulations. You really do. It goes without saying. And the thing is, you've also said I really don't like your caption about, the dark divine feminine. This is going to get me shot. No, because a true Lilithian, and I am a true fucking Lilithian, will tell you it's not about the divine dark feminine. Like, there's nothing dark feminine about being cheated on, babe. We've all been there. Okay, but what's so divine about that? Okay, the dark feminine. I agree. A lot of people do have that idea twisted. And I also would like to preface this by saying that there are a lot of younger women working with Lilith, and they shouldn't be. They have a lot more. You've got the maiden, mother, and crone. They've got to activate a bit more crone energy before you work with Lilith, right? Have you stopped to think for one moment that all of these women who you say your partner cheated on you with, your ex cheated on you with, were also Lilithians? Did you think maybe for 1 second that she brought all of you people together?
I don't think that they were Lilithians, but it's possible they might have been, okay? I didn't get that vibe that they were particularly sophisticated occultists or sophisticated witches with what they were doing, okay? I was getting major self-esteem issues, okay? Now, I didn't look into all of their fields, okay? I would never do that. That's completely out of integrity. I was shown, okay? I was shown that there was a coordinated attack. So their wounds were that they didn't feel good enough and they were in competition with me, okay? Now, they're disputing that this was Lilith, but I'm gonna push back and say, doesn't Lilith help you, like, bring out your shadow? So if their shadow was that they're competing with other women, then surely they would bring that out by being in direct competition and knowingly dealing with a man who's taken, okay? And because I found most of these messages on Instagram, and some on Facebook, but a lot on Instagram, okay? He was using Instagram to talk to some of these women. You could clearly see on his Instagram that he was in a relationship, okay? So a lot of these women knew that he was in a relationship and was still engaging with him sexually. That's obviously somebody that has self-esteem issues. Like, why would you knowingly deal with a man that is taken by somebody else, okay? I was shown that they were in competition with me and that they had succubi attachments. I'm not blaming them for his indiscretions. He's a piece of shit. That's why he did those things, okay? But there was the influence, okay, of those beings. And if you watch the long form podcast, when I post these clips, it's always to get you to watch the long form podcast. Not that you're obliged to do that. Nobody has to. You can do whatever you want. But if you did watch the long form content, you'll know that I was talking about that because there was a coordinated attack in the field by some of these entities to take down oracles that serve Christ Sophia, okay, and was speaking, whose role it was, whose templating it was to speak for the children, okay, and to speak up against these antichrist forces that are operating on the planet, okay. Obviously, I was talking about what was happening in Palestine. I was speaking up for the children there. I was fundraising for families there, and I was talking about the antichrist messianic agenda to rebuild Solomon's temple on the site of Al-Aqsa. And they were trying to stop me, okay, these entities, okay, by giving me loads of personal drama to deal with. And I know several women who have been part of the movement, the Free Palestine movement, who are oracle, sages, mystics, witches, whatever you want to call it, shamans, who have been speaking for Palestine, who have been speaking for the children, who also said that for the first few months that the genocide was happening, they were just in complete personal shutdown because of some personal drama that they were going through. Okay, now, I haven't worked with all of these women on their field, but I was shown how there was a coordinated attack on many of us that serve the Christ Sophia mission to stop us, prevent us from stepping into that role and that mission and from focusing on it. Because when you're bogged down with personal drama and heartbreak and logistical nightmares because you now have to move country again and have to deal with all this administrative bullshit, and it cost me a lot of money as well, you don't have time and the emotional bandwidth to be speaking up and doing activism when you're having to deal with just basic survival and processing your own personal heartbreak, okay? That's why I was speaking on that. Okay, obviously I've attracted the wrath of people that have been helped by Lilith. And it is what it is, okay? Like, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I don't feel like apologizing because that's my experience and that's what happened.
All of you together in that moment so you could all understand, here's your wound, let's clean it. She, from where I'm standing, she gave you the opportunity to clear the thing that drug this man in to begin with into your space.
Oh, yeah, completely. Okay, I completely agree with her. Like I said, when I discovered this, I was like, I did feel liberated, actually. I was like, it was like relief in my body. I was like, oh, I'm free. Because it was going really badly for multiple reasons, as I've explained. He was saying he didn't want to be vegan. His response to the genocide was just not it. It was like he had normalized it. He didn't want to do anything to help. He wasn't interested in any activism. And I was just like, I just started to be like, this is not my person. This is so not my person. And I'd been trying to get him to fit into this person that I needed him to be, and he had been trying also through his own wounds to try and fit into this mold because he wanted to be a better man, and he was looking at me as this muse to help him be a better man, even though I have my own shadows as well. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but as he healed, he realized and worked on his shit. Obviously he didn't work on his shit completely because he did what he did, but he started working on some of his attachment wounds and realized he didn't want to be fitting into my frame anymore. He wanted to be his own person, and he wanted out. Like, he wanted out, and he needed to rip the band-aid off, so he did what he did. And yeah, I get it. Like, I'm not blaming Lilith for it. That you're really getting me wrong, but there was a coordinated attack to try and silence us from speaking about Palestine and from doing the work that we need to do. And it did, it took so much of my energy at that time. I got a lot more quiet. And I was also dealing with other attacks as well, which I've talked about in various other pieces of content.
The amount of times I've had to stop this video because I can't stop burping. Have you thought maybe this form of chaos was your one and only true opportunity to be liberated as a woman? And I don't mean dark, divine, feminine. I mean as a fucking woman. How dare you blame Lilith for something that's gone wrong in your life because of your poor choices in men? And this isn't to say none of us have done this. We've all done it. Every daughter of Lilith and every devotee of Lilith has fucked up.
What I will take responsibility for, and I will apologize for, is posting such a short form clip lacks context. I don't know. It's just my assumption that, like, if something catches my interest, either in a positive or a negative way, I'll go and look at the long form content to see what the context is. And I get that not everybody does that. They'll see like a short clip and they'll get very upset about it. They'll be like, oh, this lacks context and this is not, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so I'm not blaming Lilith for what he did or what went wrong. I'm just warning people off working with her because ultimately it wasn't a grounding, stabilizing energy in my life. And this whole, like, liberated through chaos. Yeah, chaos is a feminine principle, okay? I'm all about divine union and alchemy. So I want some order in my life. I don't just want chaos. I want divine union. I want masculine and feminine merging into one. And ultimately seeking prime creator, union with prime creator.
And made bad choices in the people that they have brought into their bodies, their essence, their aura. We've all done that. That's why we're Lilithians, because we turned to Mother when we needed help to clear that. I don't know what intentions you had when you went into a relationship with her, but let me tell you, anyone who watches that video and thinks that this is true, come here, okay? Let me hold your hand while I tell you this. You cannot blame Mother Lilith when your life goes to shit. In the same way, you can't blame any other divine goddess, divine mother energy. You can't. And a lot of people...
like I said, I don't believe in goddesses. Like, I think that these archetypal feminine energies are, they're fractals or they're aeons, or if they're connected to Prime Creator, or they're just spirits, okay? They're entities that are demonic if they're not connected to Prime Creator by definition. And that's cool. If you don't have a problem working with demons, work with them, that's cool. I'm not saying that they're all evil. I just don't find it a safe way to be working in the field. I prefer to work with entities that serve the living Christ and the law of one. They're less likely to be tricksters. They're less likely to deceive you. As long as she's not harming anybody, I don't have a problem.
Who are destined to work with Lilith, who are her cosmic children, have to go through certain trials and tribulations in order to receive her fucking excellence. And unfortunately, you failed that exam. Not only did you fail it, you came on here with your whole chest and just blurted out a bunch of rubbish about who my mother truly is. You're talking about a divine primordial being that you truly do not understand. What sets her apart from everyone is that nobody will ever truly understand who Lilith is. Her lore and her mythology and her history and how deeply she is rooted in every form of history. No one's ever going to understand her.
Okay, so there's a few things that I left out. Firstly, I don't believe that God is the architect of confusion. The more I've worked in the fields and the more I've learned and the more I've studied, the more I've realized how much I don't know and how much more there is to learn. Like when people start, this when I was talking about, there's so many ignorant people, and I'm not talking about Coco here, okay, but some of the other people who are trolling me, that they're so ignorant that they don't even know how ignorant they are. They think that they know something. There's so much that we don't know, okay? And yes, okay, I've spoken on one aspect of Lilith or Lilu, and I've reduced her to a single epithet, and she doesn't like that. I've posted like a 10-second clip or a 1-minute clip on my TikTok, okay? That's not the whole of everything that I teach, and I would never take somebody's whole entire teachings just based on one clip. If she wants to call it a divine mother, she's welcome to do that. Lisa Renee has spoken on that, okay, about how basically Alien Dark Mother will insert herself and convince people, well, not convince, but act like an intermediary so that people think that this is the Divine Mother, and it keeps people away from the true Divine Mother stream from the 13th dimension. Okay, so I get that people have different experiences, okay? I'm not telling you what to do. If you find her to be helpful and you love her and you benefited from her, cool. But that doesn't stop her from being what I've said.
Is she a demon? Is she a dragon? Is she a vampire? What is she? Is she a fairy? Is she a fucking earth goddess? What is she? You are never gonna know. None of us are.
I think the reason why also she's getting such a confusing energy is because of all these different names that they're giving Lilith that aren't Lilith. Like Divine Mother, I don't think is Lilith, okay? The first woman, I don't believe that, okay? Alphabet of Ben Sirah, not a canonical text, not a historical work, does not claim to be a historical work. All the other biblical reimaginings written by feminist scholars and feminist occultists and feminist witches and Kabbalists and New Agers, they're pulling from a text that doesn't ever claim to be historical. Okay, if you believe the Adam and Eve story, that's cool. I don't know if I believe that. I'm currently starting to dive into a body of research that pulls from very ancient North African mother ancestor worshipping religions that talk about a mother goddess, or i.e. the first woman, called Aman, I think. And it seems to have some parallels with Dom and his teacher. Okay, his teacher, Alan John Miller, talks about the first man and woman being Aman and a man, I think were their names. So I'm just starting to dive into that research, okay? The whole idea being Lilith was the first woman is just fiction, in my opinion. I don't think it's true. So, the Divine Mother, there is a real Divine Mother. And yeah, if y'all don't like the Adam and Eve story, go and read the Gnostic text. Read the rape of Eve, okay? There's a whole story on Eve and Sophia and the Archons. It's okay, trigger warning, it does include a story of gang rape and these Archons, and how they created these two, male and female, out of mud. And it's literally Eve that breathes life into Adam. Okay, there's also some parallels there with the Sumerian text and the Sumerian story of the Anunnaki creating a dapper out of clay. So read all these stories, okay? Like obviously I like reading all the stories, okay? I don't claim to be an expert on Lilith, because I read around a lot of this subject, okay? Obviously I've looked into Vedic and Tantric texts as well, and Tantric and Yogic sciences. So that obviously spreads my expertise across multiple different traditions. So I'm just kind of a dot connector. But every so often I go through a little initiation to dive in deeper onto one subject. And right now it's Lilith. So let's continue.
My aim is to be a high priestess of Lilith. I'm learning every single day. But I can't tell you how wrong you are. And this isn't to invalidate your experience, because I can only imagine how difficult your experience must have been. But you can't do that. Let's not do that. Let's educate ourselves properly. And what's annoying about that is the only way to truly educate yourself on the excellence and brilliance of Lilith and what Lilith brings to the life of a woman, okay, especially a woman, is by working with her. By working with her one-to-one, like truly working with her, really, really building that relationship with her and going, okay, so what was that about? Like when shit turns upside down in my life for any reason, I look within myself, try and find the answer. 9 times out of 10, I find it. If I don't, I turn to her and I say, okay, so what's that about? Guess what? I find the answer. Boom, straight away, bitch. I find out straight away because I have a relationship with her. Maybe you went into this relationship with her not knowing exactly what it entailed, but I tell everybody, once you call her in, there's no going back. Lilith doesn't leave.
Okay, that I don't agree with that. Okay, that's not true. Not in my experience. There is, like, I've removed her influence. I don't work with her. I did used to work with her. Some people have said that that's not Lilith that you were working with. What is Lilith then? Okay, like I know that she was talking in one of her videos, she was talking about deity work, and she's like, if you're not ready, or you're not worthy of working with a deity, you'll encounter a trickster spirits. Trickster spirits and imposters are very real in the fields, okay? Even if you're clairvoyant, you can encounter beings that will pretend to be other beings. Jesus is massively impersonated, okay? I've even encountered a Jesus imposter in the fields. I spoke about that in a previous video. So that can happen, okay? That can definitely happen. But I don't know, saying, like, I don't have any intention of working with her directly. Any being that's a demon, and she has acknowledged that this being is a demon. Any being that's a demon, I don't really trust, because if you're not submitted to the Most High, then you're not obligated to follow like universal laws, like being truthful and being honest all the time. So I feel like they can be like tricksters or like themselves, okay? They can be manipulative. So I don't really trust working with demons, and I'm not going to be doing it. If y'all want to do it, you can do that. That's like, I don't have a problem. You do whatever you want, guys, okay? You have free will. But I am going to share my experience, okay? I'm not blaming anyone. I'm just saying that this is what happened. This is how they operate sometimes. This is what they do. These Lilu-like succubi. I don't know if they serve Lilith. I don't know what their relationship to the Lilith entity is. I don't even know if a Lilith entity is real, but I have seen an entity in the fields that looks like a Lilith and identifies itself as Lilith or alien dark mother. Okay, it seems to be a universal archetype that will shapeshift and it has different, it performs different, it has a different effect on the person's field depending on where it's attached and what archetype it represents. So that's my experience, okay? Y'all can take it or you can leave it. In my experience, this Lilith entity will basically attach to your feminine wounding, okay? So yeah, would I talk to a demon and ask it what was up with that? Or would I talk to an entity that's not God sourced? Not without the presence of Yeshua, like I said before. Maybe I'd call upon him to ask, and I'd like hold a council in the field and be like, hey, let's talk with Lilith. And bring Jesus and be present for that conversation. Because a lot of them actually like love Jesus even, or they're like reverent to him, or they're even sometimes, some of them are a little afraid of him. Some of them hate him. But yeah, he's really good for dealing with entities that are not God sourced. So that's just how I like to work, okay? I'm just sharing my experience. You guys can take it or leave it.
Once you call her in, there is no going back, because you don't get to ask stuff from her. You don't get to ask her for shit without giving shit. And the shit that you need to give isn't offerings. It's not even like shadow work. It's truly transforming yourself through chaos, liberating yourself so you can be worthy of calling yourself a child, a daughter, a son, or devotee of Lilith. Thank you. That was my TED Talk.
Okay, I get that she's very serious about the work that she does. I respect that. Like, I will say I respect that, okay? I'm also very serious about the work that I do. This is not like a fun thing for me or a game. Not saying that I don't enjoy it, okay? I'm very passionate about the work that I do, and I do enjoy it. I have fun with my clients. We enjoy ourselves in the field, and we'll laugh about stuff as well. But it is serious work that we're doing, okay? We're sometimes healing very, very deep trauma, okay? My clients have been through some shit, okay? A lot of my clients are involved in like, you know, like they'll be in like sometimes positions where some of them might be associating with dangerous people, or in situations that are unsafe. So yeah, I'm extremely serious about what I do. And I know that this work, even before when I started initiating, was going to attract some psychic attack or demonic attack, or just people being upset by the things that we're teaching. Okay, so I don't do this lightly, but I am going to speak on it. I am going to share my experience, and if people don't like that, that's fine, okay? It's Coco's free will choice if she wants to make a video. If she wants to remix my content and comment on it, that's fine. She's allowed to do that. I'm also allowed to respond. And, you know, I hope that we can all keep this conversation respectful, and we can all just keep learning, because that's all we're trying to do, right? We're all just trying to learn so that we can liberate ourselves, okay? And so we can help ourselves and we can help each other. That's all my intention is, just being of service here. And if it hasn't helped you, then you don't have to stay, and if it has helped you, then you're welcome. So the webinar, we are going to be going even deeper into this topic, okay? So I'm putting the details of the webinar in the description below. As at the time of filming, I haven't worked out exactly how the whole payment processing system is going to work. I'm probably going to ask you guys to sign an intake form, even though, you know, I keep the price. I try and keep the price for my webinars really accessible. I'm going to keep it at early bird £11, like I usually do, maybe for a week. Just, you know, because I want you guys that are seriously devoted to this work and serious about doing this work, and are interested in working with me, to be able to access the teachings. But I'm gonna ask you guys to sign an intake form, because I need to really protect these codes, okay? I don't want people that have got negative intentions to be accessing this work. So I will ask you guys to fill out an intake form, and then yes, come and join me for the webinar, okay? We're going to be talking about Lilith, and we're going to be clearing her influence from the fields, connecting to the true divine mother and Sophia. And if that's not something that's interesting, that sounds interesting to you, then don't join. If you do want to do that, then come and join. If you're on the fence, I don't know, okay? I'm going to do a couple more podcasts before the webinar, so maybe just sit on it, put a pin in it, come back, and we'll figure out if it's right for you. But I would say, if you're on the fence, then hold off right now. This might not be the webinar for you. Okay, thanks for tuning in, guys, and I hope you enjoyed that video. Let me know your comments and share your experiences in the comments box below. You know I love hearing from you guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Okay, peace out. One love.